What's going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. We're taking a look at the Shark Lock and the Atlas Lock. I know there's other videos on this, but I haven't done a video on this, so I want to explore this myself because honestly, I've got some opinions and I've got some ideas on which one I think is better and how they're the same, but I haven't actually taken this Atlas Lock knife apart yet. I have taken multiple Shark Locks apart. So I'm curious to see if my assessment, my pre-assessment of what I think is going on here and why I think the Shark Lock, spoiler alert, why I think the Shark Lock is better. I'm curious to see if that's actually true or not. Before we begin, before I start digging into these knives, I do want to talk a little bit about history and maybe a little bit of drama and things like that. So, Andrew Demko, who is the designer of this knife and the inventor and designer of the Shark Lock, used to work for Cold Steel as an employee. As an employee of Cold Steel, he invented arguably the world's strongest folding lock, the Triad Lock. He owned the patent, or he created the patent, I believe, but then Cold Steel now owns it, or rather GSM, who owns Cold Steel, now owns it. So Andrew Demko does not own the rights to the Triad Lock. It's owned by Cold Steel. And so when Andrew Demko left Cold Steel to go out on his own, he wanted to invent his own brand new knife and his own brand new lock. And he came up with the Shark Lock, which is a variation of the Snex Lock, I believe. Kind of took that and then souped it up. Similar to what he did with the Triad, right? Because the Triad Lock is really just a normal lock-back design, but then he modified it to soup it up and make it extra strong. And he pretty much did the same thing with the Snex Lock. The Snex Lock has all of the convenience features of this, right? The easy one-handed closing, back spring switch type action. But it's not super robust, but he took that design and did a similar thing that he did to the Triad Lock with the lockback and souped that up, and he created the Shark Lock. So let's go back to Cold Steel. The problem Cold Steel is facing is the patent for the Cold Steel Triad Lock is about to expire. I've heard as early as this year, 2024. However, when I do the math, I don't see it being 2024 based on I think it's a 20-year patent, and then based on when I see the first record of use of the Triad Lock, I see it still being a number of years. So I don't know the exact date, but the Triad Lock patent's about to expire, and that is going to affect Cold Steel's ability to have kind of their bread and butter, cool, unique thing, right? That Triad Lock was kind of their thing all along, and it does make me wonder if that expiring patent is what prompted Lynn Thompson to sell the company, because he realized once that lock goes away, it's not game over for Cold Steel, for sure, but it's a big kick to the nuts, if you know what I mean. Losing that lock, having anybody being able to use that lock, that would be a difficult thing to get through, and Lynn may have been like, you know what, I'm too old, I've been in this game too long to deal with our bread and butter, the Triad Lock, all of a sudden going away. So maybe that's part of the reason he sold. I don't know. So GSM is like, we got to come up with something new. We have to come up with something new. So they saw what Andrew was doing with the Shark Lock, and they kind of pulled an Andrew to a certain degree and took the principle of the Shark Lock, the principle of the Snex Lock, modified it enough so that it was their own, and created the Atlas Lock. So fundamentally, these two locks are essentially the same. They're really essentially the same. You can see here, two-pin system. These are just much further apart on the Shark Lock. This is the stop pin for the blade. You can see how it rests on there. Same thing with this one. Stop pin for the blade. It's just a much longer tang in order to get all the way down there. And then you have this sliding steel bar that goes around this secondary pin. The secondary pin is basically the lock pin, right? So this is what the lock is. So this is like a fork that comes up here and comes up here, and then it wedges up in front of the tang of this blade, and it creates the lockup, and then this pin is what distributes that force throughout the entire frame and makes it super stable. Same thing here. The only difference is it's not a fork that goes around. This lock bar actually completely encompasses the second pin because it has more space here to do that. Couldn't do that here because there's not enough space for this lock bar to go all the way around this thing as a single piece, so it has the fork design. This is the same, it just goes all the way around. Some people get confused because they think that they work differently. They don't realize that it's the same thing. This just has a closed top, this has an open top, and then there's just this distance. Other than that, it's the same lock. Now, of course, the thing that makes the Shark lock so much better from a usability standpoint is the fact that the actuation switch is all the way up at the top here, whereas on this one, it isn't. It's been moved below this section, and it's actually indented right here. And that makes it more difficult to actuate, especially on smaller knives. Like, this is about as small as a knife you could get with the Atlas lock and not have it being a pain in the butt. You can see if I want to use my index finger, which is the preferred method, because that way you are completely out of the path of the blade, you have to go all the way down here. All the way down here. Your grip is pretty compromised, even on a knife this big. And then if you get smaller, like you're like down here trying to do this, and you just do not have a good grip. Now you can use your thumb like a lock back and do the normal like triad lock shake thing where it just falls on your finger. You can do that, and it works pretty well, but it's not as good as the Shark lock. How you can actuate this all the way up at the top and just let it fall and free float down. So let's open these up. I'll probably not say anything while I'm taking these apart so that I can fast forward, even though famous last words, because I'll probably continue to yap and I'll just fast forward and nobody will hear what I'm saying at all. Yeah, both of these are fairly easy to take apart. We do have some springs and things to deal with. The 80-20 here has T8 screws on the body, which is nice. The Engage, the Atlas lock cold steel one, has T6, which sucks, but what can you do? So we're going to take the back off here. We're going to hope that the spring does not shoot me in the face and I lose it, because we actually have to take this whole mamma jamma apart. Let's see if I can do this here. Slowly but surely. Don't cut myself. Nice tight fit. That's what you want. Okay. We are going to have to do a little bit of prying here. I'm just so worried I'm gonna shoot the spring. So we're getting stuck down here is what's happening. There we go. Okay, we should be good now. Or not. Or not. But we're getting closer. Now we're getting stuck up here. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go. So there is inside the Shark lock. I'm going to move this over here, move this over here. Pretty cool how it has this steel insert, so you've got the bearings running on the steel there. I'm pretty sure Demko uses, in fact, I know he does, he uses stainless steel bearings, which, you know, I don't know. We can debate what's better, steel bearings or ceramic. I prefer ceramic on everything, but that's just me. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm thinking that we're going to be comparing alternate sides, because I don't want to take the entire thing apart, and the pivot unscrews on different sides for each knife. So I don't want to completely take this thing all the way apart. So we are going to kind of be looking at mirror versions of it, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's see. Let's take that off. We're just going to lift that there. This was pivot. This goes over here. Sorry, just trying to keep my stuff together. So that's interesting. Full frame, skeletonized, compared to, you know, essentially like a steel insert here. So one of the benefits of the 80-20 is how light they are in the G10 version for a full-size knife. Okay, let's see here. Once again, machining is nice. Everything is nice and tight. Okay, here we go. Let's compare. Like I said, what's the best way to do this? They are going to be mirrored versions of each other. A couple surprises here. We have this pin right here. I believe this is the... I'm scared to actuate the lock because I know these springs are going to fly out. But I believe this is just the closed detent or closed stop pin right there, as opposed to this one just not needing it because it's got a little nub right here. And that could be one of the things that made it different enough, right? When you're getting into this patent stuff, it gets pretty crazy. Same with importation laws. Like there's certain rules to say this many things can be similar, but it's got to be different in this many ways. And it could come down to this being a separate piece, which seems dumb, as opposed to being an integrated nub, right? But it does make a difference. This is a whole extra stop pin that has to be put in here, which makes it more expensive to machine and more things to break and more things to lose. Whereas this is a much simpler design because it's integrated right there. But just like I said, this is just simply a fork, whereas this one wraps all the way around the lock pin. Now, we've got the spring here. This is the same spring. Actuation's up here as opposed to being indented right there. It functions the same. Like literally, at its core, it's the same damn lock. It just has some minor differences to it. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, this wraps around 2 pins, so it's got to be more robust. Maybe. I mean, I went into this anticipating that and thinking that it wasn't going to be the case because I thought that this was almost just a pseudo contact point, right? That it wasn't really providing any benefit. But now that I look at it, I will have to admit this does look like... I'm no engineer, but this does look like it would be more robust because you've got this same pivot stop, like right here. I don't know, though. I don't know. I think this is one of those things where you just really can't guess. You would have to test them both equally to tell. Because of where these are positioned, yes, this is a super strong point of contact here, how it's wedging in between right here, and this is actually taking the brunt of the force. I thought it was this one, but it's actually this one. The stop pin is doing dual purpose as the locking pin as well as the stop pin. This one is really kind of it's a little bit of an extra anchor point, but it's kind of just the stop for the device from going up too far and probably controlling how it wears in. But as you can see right here, I mean, this one's, it's very similar to what this one's doing. And it's only using 1 pin, so it is a simpler design. Single pin to rule them all, as opposed to, I mean, they both have 2 pins, I guess. But this is also kind of wedging in between the back of the tang and this pin here. Not quite as direct as this one. I mean, this would make me think that technically the Atlas lock could probably take more negative force on the back of the blade without failing. This one is probably technically stronger, but I think if you were to actually test them out, that it would be well beyond the confines of anything reasonable, right? Meaning this would take an insane amount of force that would leave anybody speechless saying, oh my gosh, that's an extremely, extremely strong lock. Technically, this one could probably go further. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I do like this design better. It is simpler. There's less parts. But for me, the biggest clincher, like I mentioned before, is ease of use. Having the switch up at the top here makes it so much easier and safer to use. Having it all the way down here makes it difficult and cumbersome to disengage, especially on smaller knives. Now, if you get the Mayhem, the big giant knife with the Atlas lock, it's fine because you have so much handle real estate. But as you start moving into pocket knives, it doesn't quite work as well being all the way down here. And like I said before, I guarantee you there's no way they could put it up here because then it would be too close to this patent. They've got to keep it different enough. And unfortunately, it's similar to like Glocks, right? Like Glocks came out and they created, I mean, they didn't create the polymer frame pistol, but they simplify the internal mechanisms to the utmost capacity, right? They made everything as simple as possible, similar to this. And so anybody coming in wanting to do something similar, they had to change things internally. But the only thing they could change was to make it more complex or not as efficient, right? Because everything was already as efficient as could be. And I think that's what's going on here. This is as simple, efficient, and strong as can be. The only way to change this lock enough to make it legal, you would actually have to make it more cumbersome, harder to use, and extra parts, which is what I think we have with the Atlas lock. That being said, these are both great. Extremely strong lock. The amazing thing about both of these locks is the juxtaposition of how insanely robust they are and well designed, how strong the locks are, but then how easy they are to use and how effortless it is to use. I should have grabbed another shark lock because I want to demonstrate, but just the lockup on this thing, and then you just press the button and the blade just falls. It's the craziest feeling to have those things together. Typically, in like the frame lock world, the stronger the lock, the more robust the lock, the harder they are to open, especially more difficult to close. They're not as smooth. They're not as drop shutty. This isn't the best example. This one's actually not on bearings. It's an older one. But these, I could do a whole video on how crazy the feel of this lock is for me. But anyway, so that's what we're looking at. Essentially the same lock. They just tweaked a few things. You know, I was surprised that this one actually looks like it is a stronger lock, if that's all you care about. But I would say this one strikes the better balance of simplicity, efficiency, strength, and ease of use, hands down. All right, guys, let me know down below. Do you have a preference between these two? Comment. I want to hear from you. Talk to you later.